We are using the internet and staying inside more often. However, new research indicates that nature can support the wellness of our bodies and minds. I've spent my entire life being an active hiker. I became addicted to the sensation of being in nature as soon as I put on a backpack and ventured into the Sierra Nevada mountains. I loved how being in nature helped me feel more centered and at ease, as well as how it cleaned my mind. However, there has never been much scientific evidence to support my long-held belief that trekking in the outdoors has numerous psychological advantages. That is, until now. Researchers are starting to gather evidence that spending time in nature has a significant positive effect on our brains and behavior, lowering stress, anxiety, and brooding while boosting creativity, attention span, and interpersonal relationships. According to University of Utah professor David Strayer, people have been discussing their profound experiences in nature for the last several hundred years, from Thoreau to John Muir to many other writers. We are now witnessing alterations in the body and brain that imply we are in better physical and mental health when we are in nature. Even if he and other scientists think that being in nature improves our well-being, our society is becoming more and more reliant on indoor and digital activities, particularly for youngsters. Research on the benefits of nature for the brain lends credence to the idea that protecting urban and wild environments and increasing outdoor time will make people healthier, happier, and more creative. These are a few ways that scientific research demonstrates the physiological and mental effects of being in nature. 1. Spending time in nature reduces stress. Hiking, like any physical activity, is obviously a great way to relieve tension and anxiety. However, there's a chance that being in nature will increase such effects. In a recent Japanese study, subjects were given the option of walking in an urban setting or a forest, with walks of the same duration and difficulty, all the while having their blood pressure, heart rate, and variability monitored. In addition, the participants completed questionnaires regarding their psychological measurements, stress levels, and moods. According to the findings, people who walked in forests reported feeling happier and experiencing less anxiety than people who walked in cities. They also had far lower heart rates and increased heart rate variability, which indicates more relaxation and less stress, beyond whatever benefit that exercise on its own might have had. The researchers came to the conclusion that there was something positive about being in nature. In another study, researchers from Finland discovered that urban residents reported much higher levels of stress alleviation by strolling in an urban park or woodland for as little as 20 minutes compared to those who strolled in the city center. Although the exact causes of this phenomenon are unknown, scientists think that humans have evolved to be more at ease in natural environments. In a now famous lab experiment, participants who watched a movie that made them feel stressed out and then watched color-sound videotapes of natural scenes recovered from stress much faster and more fully than those who watched videos of urban environments. Roger Ulrich of Texas A&M University and colleagues conducted the experiment. These and other studies show that spending time in natural areas, or even just gazing out of windows overlooking the outdoors, somehow calms and releases tension. 2. Being in nature makes you less depressed and joyful. Naturally, a significant part of the reason hiking in the outdoors makes me happy is that it naturally elevates my mood. However, Stanford University's Gregory Bratman has discovered evidence that nature may also have additional effects on our mood. He and his associates conducted a study in 2015 wherein 60 individuals were randomized at random to walk for 50 minutes in either an urban, along a 4-lane road, or natural oak woodlands environment. The participants' emotional states and cognitive abilities, including their short-term memory recall, were evaluated both before and after the walk. The findings indicated that compared to urban walkers, people who took walks in nature reported feeling less anxious, rumination, focusing on one's own shortcomings, and negative affect as well as more happy feelings. Additionally, they performed better on the memory tests. He and his colleagues expanded on these findings in a different study by examining the impact of walking in natural settings on rumination, which has been linked to the onset of anxiety and depression. They also used fMRI equipment to observe brain activity. Brain scans were performed on participants prior to and following a 90-minute walk in either an urban or nature setting. Additionally, self-reported rumination levels and other psychological markers were examined. The researchers adjusted for a wide range of possible variables that could affect rumination or brain activity, such as the degree of physical exertion as indicated by heart rate and lung function. Nevertheless, after walking in a natural environment as opposed to an urban one, the participants reported less rumination and displayed more activity in the subgenual prefrontal cortex, a part of the brain whose deactivation is linked to anxiety and depression. These results imply that nature may have a significant influence on mood. According to Bratman, information like this has to be shared with city planners and other decision makers, whose decisions affect our natural areas. Decisions about public policy, land use planning, and urban design are incorporating ecosystem services, and it is critical to ensure that these decisions take into account empirical findings from psychology, the author states. 3. Spending time in nature boosts creativity and eases attention fatigue. Modern technology is all around us and is meant to continually nag at our attention. However, a number of scientists contend that this type of information overload is unnatural for human brains and can result in mental exhaustion, overwhelm, and burnout, necessitating attention restoration in order to return to a normal, healthy condition. Among those researchers is Strayer. According to him, spending time in nature helps replenish our attention circuits, which makes us more receptive to ideas and solutions. You're activating the prefrontal cortex and reducing cognitive resources when you use your phone for talking, texting, taking pictures, or any other activity that requires it, he claims. He and his colleagues demonstrated in a 2012 study that hikers on a 4-day backpacking trip could answer much more creative puzzles, 47% more, than a control group of persons waiting to go on the same journey. Previous research has revealed that nature itself may have a significant effect, even though other elements such as exercise or the companionship of being out together may also explain for his results. A study published in Psychological Science discovered that the effect of nature on attention restoration was responsible for the study participants' higher scores on cognitive tests. Even for people who often live in urban environments, this phenomena might be caused by changes in brain activation while viewing natural scenes versus more artificial scenes. In a recent study, researchers Peter Aspinall of Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh and colleagues found that participants whose brains were continuously monitored with a mobile electroencephalogram, EEG, while they strolled through an urban green space showed lower levels of frustration, engagement, and arousal, as well as higher levels of meditation and engagement when they left the green area. It's possible that this decreased arousal and involvement facilitate attention restoration by promoting a more contemplative, open-minded mindset. According to Strayer, this particular type of brain activity is linked to creative thinking and is frequently referred to as the brain default network. With a fresh group of hikers, he is currently conducting a duplicate of his 2012 study, monitoring their salivary cortisol levels and EEG activity prior to, during, and following a 3-day trip. Hiking in the outdoors appears to engage people's default networks and rest their attention networks, according to preliminary analysis of EEG readings. In addition, Strayer and associates are examining the effects of technology in more detail by tracking participants' EEG readings while they stroll around an arboretum, whether or not they are using a cell phone. According to their findings thus far, those who are using cell phones seem to have attention overload-related EEG readings and can only remember half as much information about the arboretum they just went through as people who are not using them. Although preliminary, Strayer's findings support the value of nature for creativity and attention restoration shown in other studies. According to Strayer, if you put down your devices and go for a walk without using any technology, and you've been using your brain to multitask, which most of us do for the most part of the day, you've allowed the prefrontal cortex to recover. And that's when these outbursts of well-being, creativity, and problem-solving occur. 4. You can learn to be generous and caring from nature. My spouse and children will attest that every time I visit locations like Yosemite or the Big Sur coast in California, I come home feeling more inclined to be giving and compassionate to everyone around me. Currently, some fresh research may clarify why that is. Jiyoung Lee, Dasher Keltner, director of the GGSC, and other researchers at the University of California, Berkeley examined the possible effects of nature on the disposition to be kind, trusting, and helpful to others, as well as the variables that might affect that relationship, in a series of experiments that were published in 2014. In order to conduct their study, the researchers first showed participants subjectively beautiful nature scenes, whose levels of beauty were rated independently. Next, they watched participants as they played 2 economics games, the trust game and the dictator game, which gauged trust and generosity respectively. Participants behaved more kindly and trustedly in the games after viewing the more beautiful natural scenes than those who observed less attractive ones. And the effects seemed to be caused by comparable increases in positive feeling. In a different section of the study, participants were instructed to respond to a questionnaire regarding their feelings as they sat at a table surrounded by, well, pretty plants. The experiment was declared over, and the participants were free to depart. However, if they so desired, they may offer to help create paper cranes for a Japanese relief initiative. Their prosociality, or eagerness to assist, was gauged by how many cranes they made, or failed to make. The number of cranes created by participants increased dramatically in response to the presence of more beautiful plants, and the results again demonstrated that this increase was mediated by the good feeling evoked by natural beauty. The researchers came to the conclusion that being in awe at the beauty of nature boosts positive emotion, which in turn encourages prosocial activities. It's possible that this occurs via evoking awe, a feeling similar to wonder, and a sense of belonging to something bigger than oneself. An experiment by Paul Piff of the University of California, Irvine, and colleagues provides evidence in support of this theory. Participants who stared up a grove of very tall trees for as little as 1 minute showed measurable increases in awe, as well as more helpful behavior and an ethical approach to moral dilemmas, compared to those who looked up at a high building for the same amount of time. 5. You feel more alive in nature. It should come as no surprise that being in nature gives us a sense of increased vitality and aliveness. Given all of these advantages, being outside sparks our creativity, improves our mood, helps us decompress from the daily strains of our overscheduled lives, and increases our capacity for kindness. While there may not be a perfect amount of time spent in nature, veteran hikers recommend detaching from daily life for at least 3 days, according to Strayer. Furthermore, it's impossible to evaluate with certainty how nature measures up to other strategies for reducing stress or regaining focus, including meditation or sleep. Before drawing any firm conclusions, Strayer and Bratman agree that much more thorough research is required to fully understand these consequences. However, the research does indicate that there may be a connection between nature and psychological well-being, which is encouraging to know, especially considering that many of us can enjoy nature for free by simply walking outside our home. Findings like this ought to compel society to give greater thought to how we protect our urban parks and wilderness areas. Furthermore, despite the lack of conclusive research, Strayer is confident that science will eventually confirm what people like me have long sensed: that there is something about nature that revitalizes us and improves our feelings, thoughts, and comprehension of both ourselves and others. According to Strayer, you can't have centuries of people writing about this and not have anything going on. The real world is something pretty spectacular that you are missing out on if you are always using a device or in front of a screen.